So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend Richard Clark.
How do I get that to show my magic? Is that good? Yes. Right. So, raise your hands if you would like to be a little bit happier at work. Thank God. Don't know what I'd have talked about for the next 45 minutes if you hadn't. Right. So, I have got some very good news for you. Happiness in the workplace, it's a science. Okay? There are known factors that will improve your happiness, and there are known factors that will not. And at a personal level, just knowing what those factors are, you can understand why you're feeling a bit meh one day, or why you're enjoying work a bit more than usual. But the real magic happens at a team level. If you can get together with your team to optimize these factors, you can together create a workplace which is just a little bit better for everyone. So today, you are all going to learn what these factors are. Okay, so tomorrow, you can go back to your manager, you can go back to your team, you can get together and make your workplace a little bit happier. When I was 15 years old, I had to decide what A-levels I wanted to do. Okay? This is me in the middle when I was 13, 2 years before. As you can see by the nice groovy haircut and my brother's tracksuit, this was the late 80s. And because I didn't know what A-levels I had to do, I was sent to the careers advisor. And he said to me, right, what job do you want to do after school? And I said, look, I have got no idea. He said, okay, what industry? And I remember saying to him, I don't know, I just don't want to work in an office. And he goes, okay, right, let's keep it simple. He said, just do some subjects that you like. And then he said those fateful words that changed the rest of my life. He said, do something that makes you happy. And from that moment on, I can't remember before that, I fixated on this concept of doing stuff to make me happy. Okay, so I chose 3 A-levels that made absolutely no sense together because I enjoyed them. I then went to university. I studied behavioral science because I like nature documentaries, right? And then, much to my parents', what's a good word I could use here, despair, when my friends all went to the city, I went to Turkey and I worked in a bar for a year. And because I like water skiing, I learned to be a water ski instructor, and I spent a year teaching water skiing in Turkey too. And I went to Africa, I taught English, I sailed around the Caribbean for many months, tough, taught photography in America. I bought a 1972 camper van and I drove the whole coast of Australia. And then in 2001, I moved to the Canary Islands. Why? Well, because of the weather. Everybody knows that if you live somewhere warm, you're going to be happier. And so by 2013, I had a pretty good life, right? I had a fairly good job, I was married, had a lovely wife. Don't worry, nothing bad happens, okay? Okay, I see this look of terror on your face. Oh my God. Right, 2 lovely kids. But there was something missing in my life. And then I read the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And I realized that I didn't have a personal why. I didn't have any meaning in my life. This whole do stuff to make you happy was all very well, but it felt a bit selfish. So I did a bit of self-reflection, and I realized that what gave me the most meaning was helping others, particularly making other people happy. So the following year, in 2014, I set up my first company. It was an IT company because I happened to be working in IT. And our goal was to make people happy. Okay? It's called Secret Sauce. And our number 1 KPI, above profit, above revenue, was team happiness. I thought it would be easy. I thought, look, all I have to do is get the team, get them to be best friends, have some parties, and everything was sorted out. Look, we had free food, we had a hammock, we had a dartboard in the office. Okay? Yeah, it turns out it's just a little bit more complicated than that. So I've spent the last 11 years studying the science of workplace the science of happiness in the workplace, science of well-being, how it relates to team performance and company performance. And this is what I do now. I share my knowledge with wonderful people like yourselves. So, what's the answer, right? I get asked this all the time in the pub. Okay, so what's in it? What is it? What makes people happy? Yeah, it's quite complicated. Do you really want to know? So, here we go. These are the five. Don't write anything down. Please don't write anything down. These are just 5 random ones. The real ones come up in a sec. But these are 5 of the reasons that most people think you're happy. So have a look at those reasons, and I want you to think, which one do you think is the most important? I'm going to ask you in a sec, so I want you to think which one of those is the most important. Okay, everyone done that? Right, so I'm going to go through them one by one, and if you think that one is the most important, raise your hand. Do you think it is flexibility, the fact that you could work from home, hybrid, flex? Nobody. Okay, good. Good. Do you think it's being surrounded by a really great team that has... Wow. Okay. You've read my presentation, haven't you? Pay and bonuses? Come on. Perks? Free yoga lessons? Interesting, because there's a lot of companies out there that would like you to think that. Or recognition, that you're recognised for your work. Okay, cool. So most of you think it's a great team. Well, there have been lots of studies on this. What is the most important driver of workplace happiness? But I'm going to look at the biggest ever study on workplace well-being, and that was done 2 years ago by Indeed and Oxford University. They looked at 15 million candidates, and that was one of the questions they asked. What do you think is the most important driver of your happiness at work, your well-being? And here is the answer. Compensation. You were wrong. Most people think that compensation is the most important driver of workplace happiness. However, here's the twist. Those clever guys at Oxford University, they worked out what the real drivers were. Okay? And number 1 is belonging. Okay? Feeling you are part of a team and achieving something greater that you can achieve yourself. Okay? Is the top driver. Compensation's way down at number 6. So why the big difference? Well, if you can't afford to pay the rent, or if you think you're paid below what you should be, or you think your colleagues are paid more than you, lack of compensation becomes the most powerful driver of unhappiness. Okay? So high that it will outweigh everything else. But as soon as you have a fair salary, or you think you have a fair salary, other factors become more important. So if you're a manager here, right, and you want to make your team happier, and you're already paying a fair salary, giving them a bonus is probably not the best way to do it. Sorry, everybody. Okay? So, lots of things to make you happy here. Right? Add to this time of commute, free yoga lessons, all of those things. How can we simplify this list? Okay, I like to compare the science of workplace happiness to health, right? If I wanted to become healthy, there are thousands of things I could do. I could stop eating McDonald's. I could eat more beans. I could stop checking my phone before I go to sleep. I could take the stairs instead of the list. But if I could follow 3 main habits, exercise more, eat more healthily, and sleep more, that basically covers it all. And it's the same with workplace happiness. So you can copy this slide. This is from the US Surgeon General, and this is their guide to workplace well-being. Okay? These are what they call the 5 essentials. This is a really great, if you read up their studies, the US Surgeon General, their guide to well-being, and they've recognized there are 5 essentials, and they're all associated with human needs. And those 5 essentials are safety, we're going to go through them in a bit more detail, community, feeling you have autonomy, opportunity for growth, and purpose. Okay? This is from the US Surgeon General. So, the first one, they call protection from harm, is safety, right? This is arguably the most important one, okay? This is, I'm not going to get hurt at work. I'm not going to get bullied at work, okay? And if you don't feel safe at work, it's actually really difficult to be happy at all. And included in safety is psychological safety, right? Raise your hands if you know what psychological safety is. Okay, I give this talk a lot, right? There's many more people know than usual. Most people don't usually know what it is. But for the few people that don't, I will give a quick brief. If you're in a group situation and you feel safe to ask questions, challenge others, make suggestions, all without fear of anyone saying anything negative, that's when you feel psychologically safe. Now, it's super important for your happiness, but it's also really, really important for team performance. 11 years ago, Google, they wanted to find out what the characteristics, why some of their teams performed better than others. So they did a massive study. It took 2 years. They looked at, I think it was 180,000 people, 180 teams. I got those numbers wrong. It'll come up in a sec. Took 2 years. They looked at lots of things: age, experience, education, right? And they found that the single most important factor in their highest performing teams was psychological safety, okay? And what they measured was, they found that teams where people spoke about the same amount in the teams performed better than teams where 1 or 2 people spoke more than the others, irrespective of education, experience, etc. Okay? So it's super important. Second one is community. Right? This is feeling that you're included in the team, that you succeed together, right? That you're supported, and that you trust your employer. Okay? This is the belonging part. The third one is autonomy, and this is feeling that you have some control over how you work. Now, at a basic level, this means where you work and when you work. This is your work from home, this is your flexi time. You have some control over it. But it also means you have control over how you work in the office, okay? How you do your work. And this is that you have clarity in your job, that you're trusted, right? You feel safe to take risks, right? You're not going to get blamed for anything, okay? This is really important. This is where, if you have a micromanager, you don't have this, and this causes a drop in happiness. So, last year, a friend of mine, she went to New York, and she stayed in the Ritz-Carlton in Central Park, very fancy. And she arrived late at night, and she was hungry, so she didn't want to go to the restaurant, so she ordered some room service. It came up about half an hour later, and it was a bit cold, but it was late. She didn't want to complain, so she ate a little bit and then went to sleep. The following morning, as she was leaving, she bumped into a cleaner in the corridor, and she asked, "How was your stay?" My friend said, "The room was amazing, right? The decor was fantastic, and the views, spectacular. I could see over Central Park. It was beautiful. The only criticism, I'm really sorry, but the room surface was cold." The cleaner was horrified. She said, "I am so sorry. I am so sorry. That shouldn't have happened." She reached into her trolley, pulled out an iPad, found my friend's booking and just removed the bill from the bill, removed the room service from the bill on the spot. In the Ritz-Carlton, every single employee has a budget of $2,000 to solve any customer complaint, right? Without supervision, without approval from their manager. They don't even have to ask for it, okay? Timpsons in the UK have the same thing. They have a £150 or £250 budget to solve any complaint without any approval. So what does this mean? So the Ritz-Carlton, they have customer rankings way above everybody else. But employee scores, they don't publish them, but they have employee retention 3 times better than the average in the US. Okay, so super important to feel that you have control and ownership over your work. I'm just going to have a drink quickly. The fourth one is purpose, right? This does not have to mean that you are saving lives or saving the planet. It just has to mean that you know that your work has more impact than the box you're ticking off on your to-do list. Okay? And importantly, that you're recognized for your efforts. And the final one is opportunities for growth. You need to feel that you're learning and that you're growing within your company. Now, many of the small companies I work with, this is where they fail. The clear understanding of what a career the clear steps. Small companies, many people complain they don't know how to get a promotion, get a pay rise. Okay? This is really important, especially for younger workers. There we are. Those are the 5 essentials for workplace well-being. Everybody is slightly different. Everybody has slightly different needs. I need more purpose and I need community. And importantly, these change during your life. When you're young, when you're starting off, you need opportunities for growth and you need purpose, and you'll sacrifice the others for those. When you have young kids, flexibility, as you probably know, comes into play. Right. I used to be a teacher. So, before we did the main activity, I used to have to test my students to see if they'd been listening. Ha-ha! So, what we're going to do now is, on the left-hand side, don't worry, you're not going to be tested. On the left-hand side, you have a little cheat sheet of the 5 characteristics with some prompts. And on the right, you have 8 sentences from people I've interviewed over the years. If you can just get together with the people next to you and just try and categorize each section. Which area does each sentence belong to? Right, so it's a bit of a trick question. Some of these are in multiple categories, so you probably... The reason for this exercise is to give you the language to understand why people do stuff. So when someone comes to you and say, I don't like speaking up in meetings, you can think, and rather than not knowing what to do, you can then think, oh, this is lack of something or other, because I'm going to ask you in a sec. And then from there, you can work it out. So we're going to choose a couple. I don't like speaking up in meetings. What's that one? Good, right. And you all feel safe because you've all answered, which is good. My job is just to do the tasks I'm given. It's a tricky one. Yeah, I think, you've got a bit of purpose and you've got a bit of autonomy. And then one more. We never properly celebrate successes. Yeah, I think that's community, yeah. So, hopefully now you know what really makes you happy at work, right? It's not pizzas, it's not pay, it's not the free yoga lessons, right? So, what can you do with this information? Well, as happiness is a science, but happiness in the workplace is a science, you need to treat it like a science, okay? And take a strategic, logical approach to it, right? If your team is unhappy and you think, I'm going to take them out for a really posh meal on Saturday night at this best restaurant, that is not going to work if the reason they're unhappy is because they're not spending any time with their family, okay? So you need to be really strategic. So the first thing you need to do, if you want to improve your team's happiness, your own happiness, is understand the current state of affairs, okay? And your needs or your team's needs. Okay, you might already be doing stuff well. So, my formatting's a bit funny there, but anyway. At a personal level, you need to ask yourself questions like, what do you personally value the most? What motivates you? When was the last time you were really happy at work? What made you sad, okay? And then you can work out what's missing. Now, I'm a bit of a geek in this, and so every 6 months I have my own employee engagement survey that I perform on myself. Yeah, it's a bit sad, I know, but that's the way I roll. And I use this, and what I do now is I actually put it into ChatGPT and ask it to rephrase the questions, so I don't do the same questions. And from that, I can then get a good idea of how I'm feeling at the moment. I did it a few weeks ago, and I realized I was lacking in purpose, so I've realigned a few things in my life, so I'm more fulfilled. Okay, so that's on a personal level. At a team level, okay, there are various stages. Now, those who went to Claire Williams's presentation yesterday, the way she did it was textbook, right? The first thing she did, she sent out a customer survey. It wasn't a customer survey, an employee engagement survey to all her 1,000 staff. From that, you get sort of a general feeling of how everyone's feeling in the company. It's a good start. It's not enough, not nearly enough. The second thing, she did some town halls with 20 to 30 people. We do what's called retrospectives, where you get, and those can be with or without the managers. And the idea of those is you're trying to understand why people answered the way they did on the surveys. And then if you really have the time, you go down to the individual level and you ask people to explain how they're feeling or why they're feeling the way. And the purpose of this stage is to get as much data as possible, as much information as possible on your teams, on your individuals, on your company, so that you can then either as a management team make a decision, or as a team make a decision, or then pass it on to teams to help them change themselves. Okay? I'm going to give you an example of a situation we had in our company in 2019. So Secret Source, the company that that I started, we still provide software companies to UK companies, software teams to UK companies. We work with a big supermarket here, and we started the contract in 2019, so before COVID, before anyone really knew how to do remote working. And we started it off, and the first 4 weeks were brilliant, right? We do a weekly pulse survey, and they were rating 4 out of 5 every week. Week 5, all of our team ranked 1 out of 5. Boom. One of the team came to me and he said, "This is the worst job I've ever had in any company." He was 40 years old. He'd worked in lots of companies. This was brutal. For a company that was trying to make their team happy, this was here. So we spoke to the team. We said, what's going on? And as a group and an individual, they said they just didn't feel part of a team. This is what they said to us. We didn't understand it because as a team, they were really good friends. They used to go out for meals. They used to go to the cinema together. So we asked the client, and the client said to them that our team were okay. They were doing the tasks that we were giving them, but nothing more. They weren't contributing. They weren't making suggestions. We thought this is strange because that's completely the opposite way that our company worked. So we observed a meeting. We observed, and so the guys in the UK, they They set up there was a IT team. They sat all around a board table. And they sat their camera on the top of the whiteboard or the TV screen to talk to our team. And their product owner sat next to the board table, looked at our team, and just said, started the meeting. He said, "So, Gran Canaria," he said, "how do you think it's going?" Dead silent. Our team just stared at the camera. Tumbleweed. What was the matter? Psychological safety. Yes. I'll tell you how we solved it in a sec, so you can't leave for the next 5 minutes. Right. So, after you've diagnosed the issue, right, you then have to take specific actions that target that need. They can be big or they can be small. Does anybody know the story of the British cycling team? Yeah. Most of you don't, which is good. Between 1908 and 2004, British cycling won 1 gold at the Olympics. In 100 years, they won 1 gold. In 2008 and 2012, they won 16 golds and became the most successful cycling team in Olympic history. Most of the success has been put down to a guy called Dave Brailsford. He was the head of team performance, and his theory of marginal gains. Claire Williams talked about it yesterday. So when he arrived, he looked at the team and he fixed the big things first: bike design, training, nutrition. And then he looked at where he can make small, very targeted changes. So he noticed that when his team were tired, they didn't perform quite as well. So he had mattresses and pillows, personalised mattresses and pillows, made for every single cyclist. And then he noticed that when they were slightly ill, they were carrying a slight bug, they also didn't perform well. So he taught them to wash their hands like a surgeon. And then, when they competed abroad, they used to book the hotel out for a week before they arrived, disinfect it, put in their mattress and their pillow, and then lock it up, so that there was less chance of them catching anything from the hotel staff. Small changes, well, they're quite big, but small change, quite a lot of effort. Shush. Small changes, medium changes that targeted a very specific need. So, what did we do with our supermarket team? So the first thing we did was we changed the format of the meeting. Instead of being a spoken meeting, we changed it to a written meeting because people feel safer writing answers than they do speaking them. That's why you have an app here with a written Q&A, because people feel safer writing the questions than putting their hand up in front of 100 people. Okay? It's even better if it's anonymous. Second thing, we gave them the questions or anything we were going to talk about in the meeting beforehand, so they had time to think about it, so we weren't putting them on the spot. And the final thing, really important, we taught the client how to speak to our team. Okay? Nobody likes being asked a question and give an answer that they don't know is correct. I think that's right? So they used to ask questions like, how do you think it's going? Imagine you're an 18-year-old just in your first job, and someone said, how do you think it's going? You have no idea, do you? I'm having a great time, but you don't know if it's going well, so you feel very unsafe. So we changed the question from, for example, how do you feel it's going, to name one thing that's gone well in the last week. Name one thing that you think could be improved. The result, after about a month or so, our team started to feel safer. They then started to contribute by speaking, and then they became the happiest team in our company for 4 years. Right? We set the foundations with our client, and they built a connection that was unbreakable. Right, so how are we doing for time? Mark, how do you?
25 minutes.
25 minutes, lots of time. Let's call it 20. Okay. So what we're going to do now, before the Q&A, we are going to have a look at some case studies. Okay? So if you click that QR code, that will take you to a page on my website with 3 case studies. What I want you to do is, with the people next to you, I want you to have a look, read them. They're quite long, so don't start reading yet. Read them, diagnose the issue, think, what is this person missing? And then try and come up with some solutions, some easy solutions, okay? I will come round, and then you can ask me any questions if you want. No, I just need to... Hello, is it back?
I can hear you.
Okay, everybody, time's up. Would anyone like to give a solution for the first one? I can't remember his name. Paul. Paul the programmer. Pardon? Purpose, exactly. Yeah, he was lacking in purpose. So what solutions, what easy solutions do you think you could give him? And then I'll tell you what actually happened.
I think we came up with 2 potential
Yep.
ideas. Firstly, maybe try and sit down with him and try and get him to pitch to you why he likes his work and what the value adds to it. And,
I think we'll still do the wrap up in this room, just because there's so many people in this room.
Yeah, it's
It'd be weird to do that.
Okay.
Or potentially even
That's the last instruction again.
get some free feedback, ask his colleagues for like, what has been the impact of my work. If he really enjoys it, like what's
How is it? Yeah, how has what I've done supported you in your role or helped you make your job easier?
Okay. He was actually building a B2C software, so it was going out to the wider world. But yeah, okay. So that's exactly what happened. Yeah. So really cool. So in what was his name again? Paul. I really need to check my work. So Paul, we did 2 things with Paul. Well, it was actually a whole team. And the first thing was he was involved in the decision making, so he understood what the purpose of his work he was doing. And then each month, this was great, his client used to go and interview the final client, and he used to show video testimonials to Paul and the rest of his team. And it works great. It worked really well, and they still do it 2 years later. And yeah, there's nothing, they haven't, they've had no problems with that since then. Right, where's Mark gone?
I'm here.
Over there. Okay, so we're just going to go on to the Q&A now. We've got 5 minutes of Q&A.
Now, the most popular question, by far, is what were the 3 A-levels that drove you to the Canary Islands and to the life of hedonism that you took?
So one was biology, because I liked animals. One was maths, because I found it easy. And one was economics, because I thought I might own a business one day. So
Well, that worked out.
yeah.
As a manager, I know pizza isn't the answer, but it is a small budget thing I can do within my own levels of autonomy. What the team tell me they want is more money or more flexibility, which I can't, unfortunately, give them. How can I use what little autonomy I have best?
So this is a great question. And if you followed my blog, you would have read an article I wrote about 3 months ago on how to use food to strategically address these issues, right? So giving away free food is great, but if you can use it specifically to address one of these issues, it's even better. So if you've got your community, we had this in our company. Our community was a bit. They weren't chatting to each other, so we introduced a buffet breakfast in the morning, and they all came in and they had breakfast together. So if you could do that, you could do a meal out, but you say this is to thank you for your work. So you're working on the recognition section. There is actually a study somewhere, that says that if you give them croissants, right, rather than donuts, right, it's a better way of building community, because if you give people croissants for breakfast, they will eat them there and then because they make such a mess that they won't take them back to their desks. But donuts, they take back to the desks and eat them at their desks. So there we go.
Oh, dear. Do you think organizations are afraid of asking simple questions like the 5 areas to understand what a well-being hang on. Yes, what a well-being snapshot looks like? Do you think organizations are afraid of asking simple questions like that?
I don't know. I haven't met one that is afraid. They don't usually ask them those direct questions. They're usually hidden within other questions. But I suppose I have spoken to some companies that are afraid of the results because they don't want to hear what they think will come out. But yeah.
Fair enough. How do you manage opportunity for growth in a company with limited career progression or development opportunities? That's an interesting one.
We had this problem.
Because you had a small
company. Yeah. When we started, there were 10 of us in the company, and obviously you couldn't grow to be you couldn't become a manager because you couldn't have 12 managers. So we did it by a pay scale with skills. So we spent actually quite a long time building what we called a professional ladder, and we said these are the skills you need, and once you obtain all these skills, you can move up to the next pay scale. So people understood, right, I earn whatever, 20,000 euros at the moment. To move to the next one, I have to improve my leadership skills, and this is how I do it, for example. So just idea for them to be able to move, whether maybe it's not promotion, but maybe it's a pay rise.
Okay, and the final question.
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Am I happy? That is a really good question, right? I'm like everybody, right? I go up and I go down, right? They say that everybody has their own base level of happiness. It's innate, whether you're a 5 out of 10, an 8 out of 10, or a 7 out of 10. I reckon I'm a 7 out of 10, right? Okay. There are lots of things I do in my life that make me a 7.5. Stuff like I do regular exercise, I eat healthily, I sleep well, I show gratitude, I actively practice gratitude and kindness and stuff like that. So I could push myself up to a 7.5, maybe an 8, but there are days when I'm a 5 and I'm a right misery. Yeah.
Richard Clark, thank you so much for sharing your happiness with us.
Wait. I've got a final slide.
Oh, let's go for it.
Yeah. So just to tie everything up. So if you're interested in improving the well-being of your team, right, it doesn't magically happen, okay? You have to prioritize it. So if you wanted to improve sales in your company, you would put somebody in charge and you'd set some KPIs. It's the same with well-being. You have to put somebody in charge and set some KPIs. At least add it as a line item in your weekly management meeting. Learn about it. There are lots of good blogs. I can recommend a very good one. Lots of good podcasts on it. There's lots of literature. 11 years ago, there was nothing. Nowadays, there's a lot of stuff about it. As we said before, diagnose the issue, act on it, and then listen. Pulse surveys. Every week, every couple of weeks, ask your team how they're feeling, right? It gives you a really good idea of the sentiment in the company, right? Cool. There we go. That's me. If you want to learn more, if you want to just chat, that's me on LinkedIn. Please, I love talking about this stuff. I really do. Just give me a shout. I'll happily have a chat with you, all right? And that's my blog there. Every couple of weeks or so, I write an article on one simple thing, one hack that you can use in the office. And that, like the easiest one was getting a new coffee machine. And then I explained the science behind why different coffee machines work better. All right,
Richard, thank you very much. Thank you for making it happen. That was brilliant.